Hello, I'm Sky Matsuhashi, founder of SmartPokerStudy.com, the place for poker players who are always striving to be better today than they were yesterday. Poker people, in episode 54, I taught you how to adopt a HUD into your game to exploit your opponents with 6 or 7 essential HUD elements that every HUD needs. And this week's winner of the $10 ACR bankroll boost is Mike D! Wait a minute, the Beastie Boy Mike D? I doubt it, but wouldn't that be awesome? Anyway, he signed up for ACR under me and has been playing there every day since. Congrats, Mike! And for your chance to win a free $10 bankroll boost, just sign up for ACR through the show notes page, make a deposit, and send me an email confirmation. Use offer code SPSPOD in all caps to get a 27% rakeback deal. Hey, poker people, thanks for tuning in, thanks for telling your friends, and thanks for spreading the word, because that's how we grow. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Audible. I know you like audiobooks, so Audible is the #1 provider of audiobooks and has over 180,000 titles from leading audiobook producers and plenty of poker titles for you to choose from. You can improve your game or catch up on all those hot new books you've been dying to read. Just visit audibletrial.com/smartpokerstudy for your free trial that comes with a free audiobook of your choice. Go ahead and get it, visit the website, and download The Mental Game of Poker, for instance. Once again, it's www.audibletrial.com/smartpokerstudy. Okay, on to the show. Today we're hitting part 2 in a 3-part series on maximizing your HUD. Part 1 was all about HUD essentials, where I covered 6 or 7 basic elements of everybody's HUD, and I discussed how you could gradually include a HUD in your online play. In part 2 today, I'll build out your HUD with some key statistics for maximum pre- and post-flop exploitation, and we'll dive into practicing your HUD in hand history reviews. In the final part 3 next week, I'll discuss the power of pop-ups with your HUD. The HUD itself is great, but it's the pop-ups that really allow you to get in there and rip your opponent's game to shreds. Alrighty, make sure you hit the show notes for today's episode at smartpokerstudy.com/pod56 for everything I discussed today and to sign up for the weekly newsletter. Last week's newsletter contained a special video teaching you how to put together your very first HUD with the 6 essential HUD elements. This week's newsletter exclusive will be a hand history review video where I show you how to utilize the HUD during study sessions to determine if you made good choices or not. Now here it is, today's podcast mission. My mission for today is to build out your HUD with some key statistics for pre- and post-flop opponent exploitation. You'll learn more about raise first in, fold to 3-bet, Cbet and fold to Cbet stats over multiple streets. I'll also teach you how you can practice using your HUD to aid in decisions through dedicated hand history reviews. Okay, so we've got some more stats for pre- and post-flop exploitation today. Last week I discussed the essential elements of every HUD. Those 6 or 7 for the MTTers and SNGers out there just cannot be ignored. So let me repeat them now for anyone who didn't listen to episode 54. The 6 or 7 essential elements were the note editor, number of hands played, VPIP, PFR, 3-bet, fold to steal, and live amount of BBs, that's for MTT and SNG players. But once you master these stats, what is the next step? How can we further exploit our opponents with great stats? Well, I didn't mention this before, but the stats within the 7 essentials just mentioned all accumulate very quickly to give us reads on our opponents sooner rather than later. VPIP and PFR are calculated with every hand played. 3-bet is calculated every time we face an open raise from someone, and fold to steal comes along every round when in the blinds versus a steal position raise. So, to answer the question just posed about what other stats help us further exploit our opponents, well, they're gonna be stats that accumulate almost as quickly and are relevant to pre-flop, flop, and then turn play. See, every hand of poker always faces pre-flop action. A decent percentage of those hands see the flop, especially in passive games, of course. A relatively small percentage of those get to the turn. Smaller yet gets to the river. And of course, the most smallest I guess that works, but, I think you get me. The most smallest percentage of hands see showdown. So our HUD should consist of stats that accumulate quickly and give us good pre-flop, flop, and turn intel. So I'll go over each of these stats that you should add to the HUD next, but here's the quick list. The first is raise first in, or RFI. The next is fold to 3-bet. The next is flop Cbet and turn Cbet. And then the last two would be fold to flop Cbet and fold to turn Cbet, of course. So we're hitting that first one, the raise first in. Okay, RFI is slightly different than PFR in that it only counts hands and opportunities where the action was folded around to the opponent and he decided to open the pot with a raise. The bigger the RFI percentage, the wider and weaker the opening range. You'll use his RFI percentage to determine your likely equity and play accordingly by either calling to see the flop or 3-betting for value or 3-bet bluffing or just outright folding to his open pre-flop. The next stat we'll add to your HUD is the fold to 3-bet stat. This is a great one to have, especially when you're up against an active open raiser, and if you like to use aggression and make 3-bets to blow people off their hands. Know what you're trying to accomplish with your 3-bet before you make it. You're committing extra chips to the pot, and sometimes that's like 9 or more BBs. So make sure you also have a plan for the flop should he continue. If you're on a stone bluff, you'd like to see a high fold to 3-bet percentage. But if you're going for value, then you want to see a very low fold to 3-bet, as you don't want him to get away from hands that you dominate. Remember that the higher their fold to 3-bet percentage is, the more worrisome it is when they decide to call or 4-bet over your 3-bet. If you expect to fold most of the time, but they do something different, then having that plan for the flop before you made the 3-bet will really help you save money in the hand. Or, it'll help you make additional money when you flop strong. Alright, so we just discussed raise first in and fold to 3-bet. Separately, those are great stats to understand, but when you combine these two stats, what I would just call a combo stat, they are great to have next to each other on your HUD, and they really help you kind of determine some ways that you can exploit your opponents. So, for example, here are some combos to look for. Maybe an opponent has a high raise first in and a high fold to 3-bet. So an example would be like 30% RFI and 85% fold to 3-bet. These guys open wide and they ditch to aggression. They're one pump stealers, so punish them by 3-bet bluffing until they wise up and adjust their ranges, or they just start calling you more with their entire range. Another combo to look for is a low RFI and a low fold to 3-bet. So for example, maybe he raises first in 10% of the time, and he folds to 3-bet only 40% of the time. These guys open a narrow and strong range, so they don't give up that easily versus 3-bets. Generally, you want to 3-bet these guys for value or with an ace blocker and hope that they ditch their pocket jacks or 10s or, king, queen, that kind of thing. Another combo to look for is high RFI with low fold to 3-bet. So for example, 30% RFI and maybe 55% fold to 3-bet. These guys are aggressive and love to see flops, so they'll call your 3-bets with very wide and super weak ranges. You can open up your value 3-bet range versus these guys, especially when in position, as you can use your position post-flop to help you take down bloated 3-bet pots. And the last combo to look for is a low raise first in and a high fold to 3-bet. So, for example, maybe raise first in is 10%, and he has a high fold to 3-bet of 70%. These guys raise strong ranges, but they see doom whenever someone 3-bets them, and they think they're up against aces or kings every time. So they ditch way too strong a hands like pocket 10s, pocket 9s, ace queen, that kind of thing. If you find a guy like this, 3-bet him liberally, but beware because they're more likely to defend with 4-bets if you start doing this too much, because they already start with a stronger range. If they think you're picking on them, they'll more likely fight back. Alright, the next stat we'll talk about is flop and turn Cbet, I guess the next two stats. Now, the flop Cbet is the best flop stat that I use to gauge my opponent's tendencies, given that you only hit the flop about 33% of the time, and hitting the flop is like a solid draw or a pair or better, any pair or better. The percentage here indicates what types of hands he bets with as the pre-flop raiser. If over a good sample he's c-betting 30 to 40%, then I know he only c-bets when he hits and he checks when he misses. If he's up around 75% or more, then the guy likes to mix it up and bluff a bit, counting on the initiative he has by being the pre-flop opener to take down the pot. The hardest percentage to dissect is right around 50 to 70% or so over a good sample. This is probably a decent player who mixes it up and possibly uses a HUD himself to gauge when and if he should bet, or c-bet in this case. Before you decide to play a hand pre-flop, you must look at this stat before you click call or raise. Knowing his tendencies on the flop will help you decide whether or not to play your hand. If he's got a high c-bet, then you can take it away on the flop with a check raise steal or maybe a raise in position. If he's got a low c-bet stat, then you can check fold or check raise for value. And if you're in position, then flop float, which a float is just betting after somebody misses their c-bet, that could be in order. As with any bet you make, know what you're going for before you make it. Know what your intended consequences are. The same basic parameters of the flop c-bet can also be applied on the turn. So taken in conjunction or as a combo, the c-bet the flop and c-bet the turn stats, they are a powerhouse combo that tells you how willing your opponent is to fire multiple bullets, and they tell you which street they become honest on. If they're both low and he fires both streets, then you'd better have a very compelling reason to stick around to the river, as he's probably got top pair, top kicker, or better. If he's high in both, a high c-bet on the flop and a high turn c-bet, then you need to make a decision on the flop before you call as to what you'll do on the turn, because he's going to barrel it off, And always have a plan for the next street, which includes more ways to win the pot than to just make your hand. So the last two stats we'll talk about is fold to flop c-bet and fold to turn c-bet. So besides just the flop c-bet, fold to flop c-bet is a super important flop stat on your HUD. Hands hit the flop only 33% of the time, like I already mentioned. So if he's got a fold to flop c-bet of 70% or more, then you've got a flop honest player, and you need to c-bet with all of your air. Should he call, you can easily give up knowing he's got a piece of it. If his stat is lower, like 35% fold to c-bet, then you need to c-bet all of your value hands and give careful thought to the board texture before you decide to c-bet bluff. When opponents have a middle of the range percentage, like 40 to 60% over a good sample for the fold to c-bet, they're pretty hard to dissect. They like to continue with all strong hands, of course, but also with draws and overcards and just plain air. They might also look at your stats, and if you're a one-and-done player, they'll call with a plan on the flop to take it away on the turn. Now, the fold to turn c-bet stat works very much the same as the fold to flop c-bet stat, but the turn c-bet stat takes on really good relevance when you combine it with the fold to flop c-bet. So, if his fold to flop c-bet is 30%, and his fold to turn c-bet is 80, then you know you can double barrel bluff him off of many hands because he's turn honest. He folds more often on the turn. But if you're going for value, you can bet big on the flop and smaller on the turn to encourage him to call again. If the opposite stats are true, like 70% fold to flop c-bet and 30% fold to turn c-bet, then you know he only gets to the turn with the goods. So double barrel bluffs might be a bad idea, but you can bet bigger on the turn for value, as he's likely got a hand that he can call with. Now, it's key to remember that all the stats I just discussed are total stats in your HUD. They don't reflect position, relative position, or what type of pot's involved in. For example, flop c-bet is the total percentage of the time that they c-bet the flop. Well, this can actually be broken down by position. For example, how often they c-bet in early position, middle position, cutoff, button, or the blinds. It can also be displayed as in-position c-bets and out-of-position c-bets, and quite often you'll see more c-betting in position than out of position. It can also be displayed as c-bets in 2-bet pots or 3-bet or more pots. These additional ways to break down stats are what HUD pop-ups are used for, and I'll discuss the use of these HUDs or these pop-ups in next week's podcast, so make sure you come back for that. I know you'd like to win a free $10 every Tuesday to jumpstart your online poker career, so make sure you sign up for an America's Card Room account through me for 27% rakeback and a 100% first deposit bonus of up to $1,000. Just use offer code SPSPOD in all caps. Enter the code, create your account, make your first deposit, then email me your newly minted ACR screen name and you'll be entered into the weekly drawing for a free $10. I'll announce the winner in the podcast every Tuesday and transfer the $10 to your America's Card Room account. And soon we'll be holding weekly free rolls exclusive to my listeners, so get in on the action and open your own America's Card Room account today by clicking the banner at the top of this episode's show notes, or go to smartpokerstudy.com/ACR for more details and your chance to win $10 weekly. Make sure you use that offer code SPSPOD. And continuing now through the 24th, America's Card Room is holding their online Super Series with $2.5 million in guarantees and a $1 million main event on the 24th. Buy-ins range from a whopping 6 cents to 540 bones. So open an ACR account, get raked back, and get in on this tourney series. Alrighty, back to the action here. Let's talk about some practice using the HUD in hand history reviews. So I've given you all the stats you need on your HUD to exploit your opponents. Now, how do we go about learning how to use these stats to exploit the opponents? In part 1 of the series, I discussed 3 ways in which we do this. We learn what the stats tell you, learn the layout, and play with intent. There's one practice that helps with all 3 of these things, and that is using the HUD, religiously using the HUD, during every hand history review session. Hand history reviews provide the time to pause the action for as long as you need. You can sift through your notes, dig into the HUD and the pop-ups, find the information you need, and determine if your decision can be backed up with good intel gathered from your stats. For example, let's say you encounter a standard c-betting situation. You're in position versus a player who, maybe over a good sample of 250 hands, he has a fold to c-bet of 80%. Yet, on the ace-high flop, you chose not to c-bet because you didn't hit the board with your pocket threes, and you think he could call with any ace pre-flop. Was this a good opportunity to c-bet? You're darn right it was! You raised pre-flop, so an ace is definitely in your range. He just called, which puts, ace X, king X, queen X, pocket pairs, suited connectors, and gappers, and just regular connectors like 10-9 offsuit in his range. He whiffs this ace-high board quite a lot. He also folds 80% of the time, which means he only continues 20% of the time, so you can safely assume he'll only continue with a decent pair. When things line up like this, you've got to make the c-bets. So practice like this off the felt will ingrain in your mind all the stats, their uses, how they work together, and their placement in your HUD and pop-ups. This will make for more on-the-felt comfort when using your HUD and will lead to better exploitation of your opponent's tendencies and more profits for you. Challenge! Here's my challenge to you for this episode. Commit to utilizing your HUD when analyzing every decision made during your hand history reviews. If you decided to fold, what stats told you he's strong here and won't fold to a re-raise? If you decided to call, what stats told you he might be bluffing or could be betting a weaker hand? And if you decided to raise, what stats told you that he'll fold to your bluff or that he'll call your value raise with worse? Now it's your turn to take action and do something positive for your poker game.
Now get it on.
So as a quick recap, I added some more great stats to your Essential HUD. They were raise first in, fold to 3-bet, flop and turn c-bet, flop and turn, fold to c-bet. I also taught you how to utilize your HUD, off the felt for better on the felt comfort and use of your HUD. And speaking of HUDs, I just released my own smart HUD for Poker Tracker 4 on sale on the website. If you purchase it, you'll get 3 different HUDs for cash, 6 max MTT or sit and goes, and 9 max MTT or sit and goes. You'll also get 6 different pop-ups to really help you exploit your opponents. Go to smartpokerstudy.com/smarthud30. That's all one word with the number 30 at the end. SmartHUD30 for 30% off my new Smart HUD for Poker Tracker 4. And if you don't have Poker Tracker 4 yet, you can get a free 30-day trial by using my affiliate link. You don't have to commit to make a purchase. Just going through me helps to support the show, and I love the support. Visit smartpokerstudy.com/pokertracker4, and once again, all one word with the number 4 at the end, to be taken and use that page to be taken directly to the Poker Tracker 4 website where you can download your free trial. If you decide to purchase it through me, email me your purchase confirmation and I'll send you my Smart HUD for free. And, I'd also like to thank Facebook group member Loose Goose for the support by purchasing Poker Tracker 4 through me, and he's already received my HUD, so hopefully things are working out for him. If you aren't already there, head on over to the show notes at smartpokerstudy.com/pod56 for everything mentioned today, and to sign up for the weekly newsletter for poker strategy exclusives. Thank you so much for listening today. I love feedback, so hit me with it through the show notes, or you can also send an email to sky@smartpokerstudy.com, tweet me at smartpokerstudy, or post on the Facebook group at smartpokerstudy.com/discuss. And please send me those questions. I need them for the Friday Q&As. And a quick iTunes review from filmmaker Doc. He titled it, Sky Knows His Stuff 5 stars. Want to improve your odds of winning? Sky can help. He shares great tips that can help you take your game to the next level, $. Well, that's awesome, Filmmaker Doc. Thank you so much for that killer review. And I love it when people say nice things. So visit my iTunes page, my Stitcher page, my SoundCloud page, whatever, whichever one you use frequently. And please leave a review for people to help find the show. Alrighty, poker people, be sure to come back this Friday for another Q&A where I lay down some killer answers to your questions about recording your gameplay, small blind opening ranges, and a video hand history review. And next week on Tuesday's podcast, we'll hit part 3 of maximizing your HUD when I discuss pop-ups. Of course, word of mouth is the best advertising, and a hearty thank you for sharing this show with other poker people. It only grows with your help, so I'm asking you to share it with someone who will get value from it just as you do. Until next time, study smart, play much, and make your next session the best one yet.